Hello, and welcome to an intro to Anthro with two humans. I'm human number one, John McCray.
And I'm human number two, John Lehr.
And this is a podcast where we reassess what it means to be human. And the title of today's episode is We Need to Talk About Indy, Archaeologists in Film and Television. So, we're going to talk about movies today, John. Are you excited about it?
Yes, I love Indiana Jones, and I'm so glad that I'm not surprised that it has intersected with our podcast. But
it was only a matter of time.
Only a matter of time. Yeah.
So recently I came across an article, and it was talking about Tom Felton, who played Draco Malfoy in the Harry Potter films. Remember Draco was kind of a villainous young kid.
Yeah.
And Tom Felton has recently produced a movie called Canyon del Muerto. And the thing is, what this caught my attention for a couple reasons. Anytime you see an article about a child actor that doesn't involve drug abuse or shoplifting or DUI, you're always like, okay, that's a feel-good story. You know,
time to celebrate. They survived. Right. They survived.
Because you know Hollywood can be very hard on people, especially kids.
Yeah. Oh God! But all ages, ages. All right. Yeah.
So, well played, Mr. Felton. I guess I'll say.
Well done.
Well done. Yes.
Yeah.
And the other reason this caught my attention was the movie is about Anne Axtell Morris, and Anne Axtell Morris was one of the first female American archaeologists back in like the 20s and 30s. And she's being played by Abigail Lowry, who's a Scottish actor. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to me because this is such a unique time in American anthropology and archaeology.
Egyptology or whatever they called it, right? Isn't that Egyptologist?
Yeah.
People who raided tombs, but under the guise that it was for science.
Right. Exactly. And people were still trying to figure it out, you know? So, Anne Morris was married to Earl Morris, who's one of the big names of Southwestern archaeology. And even in Earl's obituary in 1957, Alfred Kidder, who's another big archaeologist in Southwestern archaeology, described Anne as being vivid and brilliant. Robert Berg, who worked with the Morrises, described Anne as being an archaeologist of note in her own right. But yet, people don't really know about Anne Morris. And
it took Malfoy. It took Draco. Draco to bring her to our attention.
I know. Of all the subjects, I was like so blown away by it because not only is it Southwestern archaeology, which is
right up your alley,
but it's also that it's about a woman archaeologist. And so Anne Morris, she married Earl Morris back in the 20s. They worked out in Canyon del Muerto and Canyon de Chelly out in the Dene or the Navajo Nation. They also went down to Yucatan, and she worked on Chichen Itza. I think they excavated Chichen Itza.
You know what about Chichen Itza, just to, if I may? The stairs are too steep. Why'd they make them so small and steep? My wife and I went up that thing, and she froze. Jennifer froze halfway up. Really? Would not go up, would not go down. I could not. Wow. I mean, seriously, I just sit down with her for a while. I wish they'd made them. I'm just saying, in the future. For those people who make,
well, maybe they could go back in and redesign them or something.
I mean, take every other stair out or something. Yeah.
Maybe feet were smaller or something back then, or something. Like they weren't used to like our large 20th century feet or something.
Well, they were all aliens. That's why.
So Anne was right in the thick of it, though, and she even has written some books. She wrote a book called Digging in Yucatan, and she wrote a book called Digging in the Southwest America or Southwestern United States. And the thing is, I tried to get them. They're very expensive. I wish I could afford to get copies of those books. But anyway, I got a copy of the Earl Morris book. But I'm telling you, if you can, get those books now, because once this movie comes out, they're going to be
Boom. They're going to
flying off the shelf.
God, maybe that's something we should do. We should buy them all up.
Just flash forward to 3 years from now with us, just with cartons of Ann Morris's reprints that we paid for in our garage.
Yeah, that goes up with our ideas about like opening up 7-Elevens. And you've got an idea about opening 7-Elevens, laundromats, and car washes.
Yeah, things that just got to generate their own money. You don't have to
just go pick up. Yeah, put soap in and pick up the quarters.
And just keep them in quarters.
Yeah,
don't take them to the bank. Just like bury them out in your backyard. So anyway, Anne was right in the thick of all of this early archaeology, and people don't really know about her. So I think when the movie comes out, I think we need to go and see it. You and me.
Oh, that's great.
And then talk about the movie. And I think that the director is actually, I think he lives in Albuquerque, so I may have to try to.
Let's see if we can interview him. That's fantastic. Yeah. Let's do it.
I'll try to bump into him.
Yeah, let's go out in that turpentine excavation site that you took me to.
Yeah, Trementina.
We could interview him out there. That'd be cool.
Yeah, and so with that said about Anne, I'm just so impressed that this movie is dealing with a female scientist, because I myself feel that we need to have more people of color and more women in the sciences. Yeah. Because I feel like you get a different perspective on if you have women and people from different backgrounds bring different information and different perspectives on any of the problems that you're tackling in science.
And not to cut to the chase, but women are smarter. And I can say this from experience because I have a son and a daughter. And once you have a son and a daughter, as you watch them grow, you realize that men are stupid, just stupid. Girls do everything first. They potty train, they talk, everything first.
And yet they're underrepresented in a lot of the sciences or tech industries. Yeah. So
my daughter's in AP biology.
Really?
Yeah, she is. Yeah, killing it.
That's great. But I would also go, since we're here, I might as well say also, I love the all-female Ghostbusters. I know. I'm not sure. It's unpopular. I don't know why. It's like,
it's tough. I mean, people get used to the first thing that came across, so that you've got that, and then you add the patriarchy to it, and there's no way those women were going to be accepted in that movie.
Now, you and I have done a lot of theater over the years. And we've also done a lot of improv.
Yes, we have.
And what I've always found interesting is in the improv shows that we worked on, we always had at least as many women or more women than men in the cast.
Yes. Which was at the time in the 90s when we were doing it was unheard of. Right. Isn't that crazy? Nobody did it. In fact, women, there were maybe one in a cast. Second City, I think, only had a maximum of 2 women in every cast of like 8 until like the 2000s or something.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me because, first of all the women we had in our shows were hilarious. They were all brilliant, funny. And also they always brought, like, you have more women in it. It's like different jokes, different scenes that you would never get if you had all men in the cast.
Absolutely. No question.
And it's all, it's like, I love John Belushi. I love Chris Farley, but you get 8 guys all being John Belushi and Chris Farley in a cast. It gets pretty tiresome to watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of that in comedy.
So and then I had a guy, just recently I heard a guy saying that the Bridesmaids, he felt emasculated after watching Bridesmaids.
What? That is one of the singular most funny movies I've ever seen. The puking scene, the diarrhea, that whole scene.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, that is maybe the funny, and I put that up there, with Spinal Tap and some, I mean, that was just straight out funny.
Yeah. That's the way I feel about it. But yeah.
Jesus. I don't know, man. I have friends who come up to me and go, "Oh, it's a tough time to be a guy now, isn't it?" And I'm like, yeah, for like 3 seconds,
Yeah.
and for 3,000 years, it's been, can you hold off on that for like?
Yeah. Just, I kind of felt like there's only one time I've ever felt emasculated in my life.
Emasculated? Well, I don't even know what that means.
You take away their masculinity completely. Just remove it.
But what is that? Oh, yeah. Okay. What was the one time?
It was back in the 90s when my wife at the time, my ex-wife and I went down to Indiana to see Tom Jones. and just so you know, yeah, so this is all, you thought this was going to, when I said talk about Indy, I'm talking about when I went down to Indiana to see Tom Jones. But I remember us going, it was like a small venue, Crown Plaza or whatever it was they called it down there. And as you're walking in, it's all a bunch of dudes with their girlfriends and their wives, and we're all kind of like smirking at each other, about like, oh, yeah, Tom Jones, whatever. And we get in there and the lights come up, Tom Jones comes out, and I swear to God, it was like, whoo, every man in the audience disappeared. Every man disappeared. And it was just Tom Jones, 5,000 women having a moment, making love. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was
panties flying, and don't they all throw their panties at him?
Oh yeah. Oh and I remember thinking, this is like the closest to being a ghost I've ever felt. Like in the movies where like somebody's a ghost and they're waving their arms, like, "Hey, I'm right here. Can you hear me? I'm right here. Can you see me?" My wife at the time couldn't see me, couldn't hear me, and it was like Tom Jones had like reached out and personally like to every man in the audience and pinched off our genitalia.
Wow. Right on.
That was emasculating. And I remember going in at intermission, going into the bathroom with all those guys that had been like smirking and everything. All of us silent in the bathroom, just with our heads down, knowing that we had to go out there for another hour and a half.
You guys couldn't even find your penis in order to hold it to pee. You couldn't. It was gone.
Silence. Silence. Not a joke, not a peep, not a smirk, anything. Tom Jones had out masculine all of us.
And he was probably 70 at the time or something. 60, 60 or something.
Just made it worse, No.
That's so great. I had a similar experience on set once. We were shooting a Western comedy I was in called Quick Draw, and there was this guy who played a Native American on it, and he was this Native American guy who was like in his like late 60s, early 70s. Yeah. And he took his shirt off on set. And I was faced away from set, but he took his shirt off and the whole set went silent. And there was like 100 people and they all went silent. Everybody froze. And I was like looking around. I was like, what's going on? And every woman, every gay man on our set was just locked on this gentleman, and he was just
ripped, or was he just like
ripped? He was ripped, and he was just, handsome as hell, and he just owned it. He was the nicest guy, Yeah.
That's emasculating. That's emasculating, Don't tell me about a woman, like a film with a strong female cast that's hilarious, It's
what
like,
a wimp. What a wimp. So, come on.
But we digress. So to get back, Tom Felton in this article talks about to get ready to shoot it, because he actually plays Earl Morris. Tom Felton is in the movie as well as produces the movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, that's like me. You have to produce your own stuff to get a job.
Right.
I'm with him.
Just make the whole thing.
Go Draco. Yeah.
The tripod.
Geico caveman doing the same thing.
Yeah, it's right up there.
Yep. A little smaller, but
So anyway, he said that to get ready for the shoot, that he and Abigail Lowry went on a archaeological boot camp to where they could kind of learn what it was like on the dig and everything. And I was kind of impressed about that, because they were like trying to make it authentic, even though the way people do digs now are definitely different than the way that they did digs back in the 20s and 30s. But
yeah.
anyway, but all this started me thinking about like how archaeologists are portrayed in film and television. And ultimately it leads to Indiana Jones, who is arguably the most famous archaeologist in the world, but who never existed. And
really, took a lot of artifacts from their home countries without asking, with no permission.
Right.
And took them home and,
sold them to the museum. There's a whole scene where he's trying to sell them. Marcus, I had it in my hands, Marcus. And then he's like trying to sell. These are good, aren't they? So, and then that kind of led me to like questions about like, what's the importance of studying archaeology and what purpose does archaeology serve in contemporary society or contemporary culture? So, just to start off with, this isn't a new question about like how archaeologists are portrayed in film or media. And in 1949, Alfred Kidder, who we talked about before, he wrote that in popular belief, there are two types of archaeologists. There's the hairy-chested archaeologist and the hairy-chinned archaeologist. That's
awesome.
It's brilliant. So it's like the hairy-chested one in the movies or he says it's mostly in comics, at that time you were looking at the Sunday papers or whatever. But he said usually the hairy-chested type are the ones, they have the gun and they have the hat and their shirt's undone, He's hacking his way through a jungle trying to find some artifact or something, some trinket that he's going to raid, And which is kind of sounds a lot like Indiana Jones.
It sure does.
Hairy chest. I put him in the hairy-chested column.
Absolutely.
And then the hairy-chinned archaeologists they're mostly like the bumbling kind of like old professor. He's
I have that bone somewhere. Exactly. Where did I drop that?
Absent-minded. Yeah. And he's always like the father of a really beautiful woman.
Sort of like the guy who was the owner of Jurassic Park. That kind of a deal.
He's rich, he's bumbling, he's smart, and he deciphers something. Kidder says he deciphers something that's important to the story right before his assistant, the handsome guy, saves the daughter or something. So
exactly.
So it's nothing new. I mean, Kidder wrote that in 1949, and people are still really having the same discussions, if not arguments, about how archaeologists are portrayed. And so I don't know, just to start out with, how do you feel about Indiana Jones?
Well, I don't know. I mean, he's locked in Spielberg. I've been Spielberged. I'm that generation that just got hammered by those guys. His The Godfather, Star Wars, and then Indiana Jones and E.T. and I was just indoctrinated to that stuff. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like things were whitewashed. Spielberg. I know. Whenever you talk about this, by the way, people always go, "Well, what about Schindler's List?" Okay, I grant this Schindler's List, but come on, let's But
did you see it when it first came out? Did you see the first one back?
Yes, I did. And I have to say, like Star Wars, the archetype, the Jungian core to all of it has played a big part in my life as a man.
Really?
Sure. In which one was it? The Choose Wisely. The
the last one that was in the last, or no, that was second to the last one because he came out with anher one years later.
The Chalice. And and then he, as he's trying to get the chalice, he there's the leap of faith. I don't know if you remember this. One of the things he has to do is the leap of faith, and he just has to leap on. And then you find out after he's landed that it was actually just a optical illusion. There was a place. I mean, that to me is a core element to what sort of my own spiritual path is that You
Do
know,
you think you would have leaped? Would you have leaped?
no, no,
No,
no. I don't leap. No,
I wouldn't have leaped, but I'd be down on my hands and knees, kind of like feeling out there.
Yeah,
You know
I'd be
what
like,
I mean?
hold on a minute. I'm not just gonna leap. But so yes, it's hard for me to separate from all of that. But you know, I loved those movies. I loved them, and they keep going. There's like The Librarian. There's the oh my God. There's there's so many offshoots from that sprig.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's
But
basically like the same story just told many times. You just
many
replace
times.
the archaeologist, you know.
And we're fascinated by it. By it. You know, what do you call it? Journey to the Center of the Earth. You know, is like falls in all of that.
Oh
too,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. Stargate is another one that they always mention. Stargate had an archaeologist.
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
geniuses.
I always, to me, it's like I remember seeing the movies when I was a kid. Right when it came out, I remember some friends of mine picked me up. And like, hey, we're going to go see this new movie called Raiders of the Lost Ark. You know, I was like 14 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember we were all blown away by it. We thought that was the most amazing thing. But I feel like it's one of those, you know, there's certain books and certain movies that you have to see at different times in your life. And to kind of see how your perspective on the movie has changed. You know, another one is as far as books go, like Catcher in the Rye. I always remember when you're young, you're like, oh yeah, those phonies, give it to the phonies.
Right. And then you read back and it's like, dude.
Yeah.
It's we were talking about that with Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah,
we were
Cuckoo's
talking about
Nest
it with Cuckoo's Nest. The first time you read it, you're like, yeah, screw the machine. Yeah. And then you read it the second time, you're like, oh my God, he's really disturbed. This guy needs, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I kind of the Indiana Jones movies, I kind of feel are the same way in a sense. I mean, not like Catcher in the Rye or Cuckoo's Nest, but you have to see them again. And and you know, and for the people who I love the Indiana, I'll tell you, I love the Indiana Jones movies. But just because you love something doesn't mean you can't look at it again critically.
Yes.
You know, it's like I love myself, but I was in therapy for 10 years.
Well, that's well. I just recently watched it too with my son, which was interesting, and I thought he would love it, and he was like, he wasn't. It didn't get him.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah. Star Wars he liked, but not as much. And he looks back at Star Wars as I think with more clear eyes than I do of like, you know, maybe there were 2 good movies out of 9, you know?
Yeah.
But the other 7, not so great.
What do you think? Was it the story, or was it just the special effects or something? Or
it could be any of that, you know, could be just, I don't know. It just didn't capture him the way it did us.
Right.
You know,
right.
But we saw it on TV too, so we didn't see it in a theater.
I don't know if that would make any difference. Do you think that would have made any difference?
I don't know. Who knows? He hated the last one. He thought this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. The one where he takes the heart out of the guy. I forgot that one. Whatever that one is. Oh no, not that. No, it's the second one. The last Temple of Doom. He hated Temple of Doom. He was like, "This is stupid." We didn't even get past the first act.
So you made him watch it. You're like, oh, if you hated that one, I'm going to make you keep watching them until you love them. I've got Temple of Doom where you're not going out anywhere this weekend. You're staying here until you say you love them. So, I mean, but that's kind of like a lot of archaeology. Like some archaeologists love Indiana Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, well, you know, he creates excitement in archaeology. He gets people interested in archaeology.
Yeah.
And probably in the last 40 years, probably at least men who go into archaeology are probably like in the back of their mind, like, I'm like Indiana Jones, you know, I got the whip, you know, I'm maybe studying Cal Berkeley or something, but, you know, I'm like Indiana Jones. And they say that kind of goes back to this whole excitement for buried treasure. Like for some reason, there's something in us that we love buried treasure.
Yes.
And to me, I think about like when Howard Carter, the guy who excavated King Tut's tomb, there's that famous line where Lord Carnarvon, who was his benefactor, was standing behind him right when they opened the tomb. And Carnarvon says, "Can you see anything?" And Carter says, "Yes, wonderful things." So, and it's kind of like we all have that. We want to find buried treasure. And did you hear about, there was a guy here in New Mexico who buried a treasure, or like a treasure box?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was found, but there's still a lot of hoopla around it, even though they found it. There's this huge following about how it was found and what clues were used, and the hoopla. It's like a mad world. You remember that movie?
Exactly. Yeah, it is. People were going crazy. They were tearing up like things at the side of the road. People were dying trying to find this thing.
Jesus.
There's something we love finding buried treasure. We as humans love to see that. And I even read somewhere, I think it was in this Earl Morris Southwestern archaeology book, about how the archaeologists, when they'd invite investors out, they would always kind of set up something to be found when the investors were there, which is pretty smart. You know what I mean?
I can relate to that. Yeah, everybody does that,
Yeah.
Just let them see something.
It's just like, go put this projectile point over there, and then when
oh, look what I found.
Like, oh wow, and have to keep dropping it near the investor until they find it. But what was interesting is Harrison Ford in 2008 was elected to the board of the Archaeological Institute of America.
No way.
Yeah.
Like in a real position? Like
on the board member to the Archaeological Institute of America.
Oh my God. Is that just to raise money? Like, what was that about? Like, he doesn't know anything.
No. He was just, I can't remember what his speech was, but it was something like, archaeology is good. Yeah. It's just like, and he received the first Bandelier Award for raising public awareness of archaeology. And the Bandelier was like, he was like another big name in Southwestern archaeology, but it's like,
damn.
So people have taken, they honored him with it. And I think
I'm on the Wild West Hall of Fame.
Are you
I don't
really?
know if you knew. I am. I have it. Wait, I have a plaque here somewhere. I thought you knew that. Yeah.
No,
Dodge City. I'm an honorary sheriff or marshal in Dodge City.
Really?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Are you like, do you ever flash that thing? Do they give you a badge?
I've lost it. It's around here somewhere.
I thought you do like Elvis or something. You get pulled over. Like, hey, I'm an honorary sheriff, and
you're under arrest.
So, and then they talk about the other thing. Some archaeologists love the idea of it's a fantasy of the rugged, heroic archaeologist, the cowboy of the science community. They like to see themselves.
Yeah.
And
really hands dirty.
Right. And they like, we go in and we do what needs to be done to, explain history or whatever. And really probably the real cowboys of archaeology now are your contract archaeologists, who are the people who, they're building a road or a building, and then they uncover some bones or something. And then the contract archaeologists are like the hired guns that are called in to come in and just as quickly as possible catalog that thing, take photos of it, get it out of there.
Really?
Yeah.
So they're they're like the mercenaries.
Like, they're like the ones that, those are your working, if you have academic archaeologists.
Yeah.
And then you have your contract archaeologists, who are the ones that are called out all the time.
Wow.
Just pull that stuff out and see, and just say, basically, is it important to preserve this, or can we continue on? And a lot of the stuff.
Guess what the answer is? A lot.
Well, I'm going to tell you,
pave over it.
There are warehouses, like in Indiana Jones. There are warehouses full of like pottery shards and everything else. Of just things that have been pulled out of, like in New Mexico, you can't barely build anything without finding some.
It's true. I was walking around with you and you saw a piece of a shard and picked it up. Oh, here's one. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah.
So you have to they come in and they catalog it, kind of look at it, analyze it, and say, yeah, we need to preserve it. No, we don't. Continue on with the project or whatever. And to me, those are really the cowboys, the ones that are doing most of the work nowadays. And they go off and, they're called into different parts of the country. They fly in, they do their work, or maybe they're working for the state and the state sends them out, and a small crew gets together. Kind of, I don't know, like wildcats or something.
Yeah, putting them back together. Charlie, we need you. Yeah. Bring your brush.
He's just goes out there. I haven't brushed off a site in years. Or something like that.
He's the best duster that I've ever had. Get him.
Find him. I don't care where he is. Get him out here.
Yep. Just like in Predator when Schwarzenegger puts that team together.
So, and then there's other archaeologists who hate Indiana Jones, who just are completely offended by his representation and just don't like him. And you've kind of touched on it already. A lot of people say, he's nothing but a pot hunter. He's just out there like looting sites.
Yeah. Which is a big part of what archaeology was. I mean, if you look at Egypt, there was a lot of horrible stuff done there. Yeah. And a lot of things that are in just recently in the paper, I think it's Greece, Rome is wanting work back from France. Is it France that has it, or maybe it's England that has it and won't return it, or there's all that stuff where people just. I mean, Hitler did that. He just looted places and took all their stuff. And it's a big part of it. It's connected to archaeology, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was kind of bad.
What happened in Egypt. Because wasn't Egypt just so much about the gold, so much about the jewels?
Yeah. And it started early, like in the 1800s. Mm-hmm. There was some guy, I think his name was Belzoni, who was a circus strongman. He was a circus strongman, started his career in a circus, and then ended up just being basically a looter of artifacts in Egypt. Wow. And he would sell them to collectors. But yeah, that was like early 1800s. They were just like looting gold and objects.
All that stuff sat there for centuries and centuries and centuries, and then a carnival strongman comes in and pries it open and just immediately plucks the ruby right off the crown of the mummy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they had been there. Some of those remains had been there for 3,500 years.
Damn.
And so people had already looted them, but they never could. Sometimes they couldn't get all the way in to loot everything, or they just looted some things. I think you were talking about it's the Elgin marbles or whatever that some British guy took them off of the Parthenon and shipped them back to England. And now Greece for like the last 60 years has been saying, hey, we want those Elgin marbles back because we never said it was
back on the building you pried them off of.
Right. And what he says is...
it's always under the guise of we had to protect it for them because... you hear a lot of that from Iraq, a lot of stuff that was taken out of Iraq.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's like, it's got to, and Indiana Jones says that it belongs in a museum. Well, it's like, you're looting it for the museum. You know what I mean? Maybe the people who produced it don't want to let it go,
Maybe it belongs to where they want it to go. Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing people say is, well, Indiana Jones is not a realistic representation of what archaeologists do.
Come on. Who's making that argument? No, duh. Yeah. I mean, the guy had a whip.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a giant ball chasing him. I mean, seriously? You worried that we're going to... How stupid are the rest of us? That's an insult to the rest of us.
Yeah, I would say, ultimately it is a movie. Let's not forget.
Yeah,
like
it's
nobody
like,
wants
come
to
on.
see like Dr. Jones like grading papers or something. You know what I mean? It's like arguing with other staff members about their
I'm
offices or
merging
something.
a database.
So I mean, it's like, come on, cut him a break. But anyway, they say, well, he doesn't really. We don't see him doing any excavation, really. I mean, like,
Yeah.
he'll dig, but
No, he
it's not
takes
like
he takes the rock off and puts a bag of sand where in its place. What about that?
I always love whenever he like takes a big wooden cover off of a tomb or something, he just throws it to the side. It's just like,
It's like wait. That was
maybe we better draw that or something.
Yeah, hold on to that.
In several movies, it's just like, throw that out of the way. Give me that art. Let's not worry about the context. I mean, context is everything in archaeology. It's like, he's not worried about the context. Just get that thing back to Marcus in the museum. And then the other thing they say, well, all of these movies play up to pseudo-archaeology and alternative history.
Oh, come on. You mean like when I suppose they're going to be referring to the ark melting the Nazi's face now?
Yeah. That might be. That might be one example of pseudo-archaeology or alternative history, I guess.
Really? So your next thing you're going to say is that the cup of Jesus doesn't give you everlasting life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, this is just what people say. This is not what I'm saying.
Everybody to their own. Each to their own.
Yeah, it's they kind of say, well, they always play up to like ancient aliens. Like it was the ancient aliens that came down and gave us this stuff.
Stuff is so interesting. The whole Templar Knights thing and how that's connected to the Black Irish and what isn't the cross buried in a bottomless lake in Nova Scotia or something like that? Didn't you tell me that?
Yeah, something like that.
And how it's all connected to these secret. Oh, that kind of stuff is fantastic.
Jesus especially Christ. for movies. You know what I mean? Like I get it. It's like, hey. It's a movie. It's a movie.
It's a movie.
It's all that stuff is perfect for movies. You know what I mean? You gotta play with the alternative history or whatever to make a good story. But
No.
Anyway,
everybody's a complainer. Everybody's a hater.
Yeah.
This is making me dislike some of your fellow. Yeah, I think they need to ease up.
All right,
ease up on Indy.
I think, well, I'm just saying, I've read a lot of articles getting ready for that.
Damn, that's amazing.
Yeah. So, and then we go into the cultural anthropology side of him we're not even talking about him as an archaeologist anymore.
Right.
We're talking about him as a character in a movie that came out in the 80s.
Yes.
And I've read, articles too about talking about, well, he's kind of this representation of a nostalgic American male-dominated past.
Yes.
It's supposed to be back in the 30s, but really it was during the 80s, during Reagan. And, we're, during the Reagan time, we were all like, we're going to recapture the greatness of America.
Boy. We did it. We did it all right.
Yeah, I remember living through that time. It wasn't so great.
Yeah, it wasn't everything. I just remember how speedy the cocaine was. That's the only thing I can remember.
Buzzed through that decade. On to the 90s.
They were stepping on it all over the place.
That would have been interesting. Indiana Jones means Sigmund Freud, and they snorted up.
Yeah, Freud, man. He got the pink stuff, Freud.
So I kind of, I can see that. Like when you see him, it's definitely like he's the American icon, the cowboy. He's got the hat. And then all the indigenous people in those
are
movies,
stupid
they're all
compared to him. Yeah.
stupid,
They're all
evil,
idiots.
swarthy.
Indy. Yeah, they've all, oh my God. That kid.
Duplicitous, they always do. Yeah.
It's so true. It's so true. Duplicitous, exactly. What about with a famous scene where the guy, has this sword and does all this fancy sword stuff, and he just takes his gun out, boom, kills him, and moves on. Just another dead native. Get out of the way. I got stuff to do.
People love that though. Remember, like it's kind of like it's kind of like when you see kung fu movies and it's like some black belt, like 7th degree black belt, and some guy he's a bar fighter. And he's just going to tackle me. And we love it to see where someone that's really spent a lot of time perfecting their craft is beat by some guy who just like gang tackles you. You know what I mean? But it's kind of the same with Indiana Jones. Like, here's a swordsman, but Indiana Jones is just going to shoot him or kill him. So,
yep.
And then the other thing is the sexism of it all, which,
every woman, every leading lady he has to save, and they're always in a silky dress the whole movie with all that dirt.
Yeah.
God, that's gotta hurt. I always feel bad. I can't remember the actress's name who was in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, but she had to do a lot of crawling in a thin silk dress. I remember.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, God, your knees. I hope they put knee pads on her underneath that dress. That must have hurt like hell.
Right. And there's kind of people have talked about his Marion. Remember Marion Ravenwood?
That's it. Yeah.
And in that first one, his relationship with Marion, it's kind of weird. I mean, now you watch it, it's a little creepy at times because he goes to find Marion, and Marion is all mad at him and says, "You ruined my life. I was just a child," or something like that.
Yeah,
it gets really weird.
Yeah.
And he still treats her like it's supposed to be this romantic story, but yet he still treats her like a little kid and like a kid's sister or something. Like there's no real sexual tension to it. I found it looking back at it, looking at it, maybe teenager,
and then it shifts. Well, and the weird thing about that scene too is she drinks. First time you meet her, she's out drinking all of these ruffians,
right?
And then immediately goes stone cold sober when the Nazis walk in. She was never that always bugged me. And then the other weird thing about Temple of the Doom is he's making out with her through the whole thing, and that Spielberg married her. Didn't he?
I know. Yeah. It doesn't seem. That whole sex tension in that one, that Temple of Doom. I'm sorry, but I didn't get it. I didn't get it at all. Like it's not seething or anything. And Mary watched
witty repartee where they don't like each other, and they just, I didn't like either of them.
Yeah, Mary and I were talking about it, and I was asking her, like, do you find it, like, does this seem hot? Like, is there something? Do you want me to be more like Indy, or it's like I don't know, but and no, we were both saying like it's very awkward. Like the sexual scenes in these movies are very awkward, and
you're right.
I read one article where it was like, what's interesting is the character Belloc, who's supposed to be the evil guy,
right?
But Belloc, you notice, speaks the indigenous language.
Right.
He blends in. The people from the indigenous culture seem to like Belloc.
Right.
And then Belloc actually treats Marion like a woman. Remember, he gives her the dress and like treats her as an adult rather than like a kid sister or something. So somebody was saying,
That's right.
But
Belloc.
So anyway, remember, I kind of felt bad because you kind of like, well, Belloc, it wasn't so bad. Like somebody liked him, it's like compared to Indy. You know what I noticed? Last time I watched it, Alfred Molina's in that movie.
Who's he? Oh, he's the bad guy, right?
At the very beginning, he's the guy who's like, throw me the idol, I'll throw you the whip.
Oh my God, that's right.
Yeah.
God, Molina, man. That guy's done everything.
From know.
That to Spider-Man.
I know.
What a career.
I know. But I was shocked to see it. It was like, wow, okay. So I tried to look into just how the films themselves came about. And apparently what the story is Spielberg always wanted to do a James Bond movie. And what happened is Cubby Broccoli and all the Broccoli's who controlled the James Bond franchise would never give him a James Bond film.
Interesting. I wonder why. He's kind of sexless. I think they made the right decision.
Yeah.
Because it's your comment about you and Mary looking at that relationship. He doesn't, there's something, I think the Broccoli's did the right thing.
Yeah. I think they sense that, because no matter what you say, I mean, come on, James Bond, especially the ones from the 60s and 70s aren't any like equality icons or something,
No, they don't hold up. They do not hold up. No.
But the thing is, they did have sexuality. I mean, there was sexuality in them.
Yeah.
And I think Cubby Broccoli must have looked at like Spielberg or something. Be like,
you look at E.T. and you're like, wait a minute, what are we doing? No.
Goonies, which I love all of those movies.
Yeah, they're Goonies, just not... Put some cheese on my broccoli and tell him no. Good night. No, but the Italians, they know. Yeah. No, he doesn't have it.
Yeah, no. And apparently it's like throughout the movies, other movies, Spielberg was always making like little hints to 007 or to James Bond movies. And so it's like, I don't know if I can't remember the scene or whatever, but somebody said, well, in Jaws, when they pull out that license plate from the Jaws's belly or so from the shark's belly, it says 007 on it. And the whole thing when they got Sean Connery to be in the movie in the Last
Temple
Crusade
of the Lost or not Last Crusade, yes.
Yeah. So I get it. Like he wanted it, and then apparently like George Lucas said, well, I got this one character, he's like James Bond, only he's an archaeologist or something. And that's how they came up with
interesting.
Indiana Jones. But I also read somebody said, Indiana Jones is James Bond without the savoir-faire. So, I'm kind of like he's missing all of that.
He's the American version. He's the kind of the crass, just cowboy with no flair. He has no style.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we can look at some of the themes in Indiana Jones real quick. But first of all, I just want to say all of them use what Alfred Hitchcock called the MacGuffin. And I'm not sure if you've ever heard. Have you heard that?
I have heard of the MacGuffin. Yeah. Yes, I'm familiar.
So the MacGuffin, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, apparently it's just something people are searching for that leads it just drives the story.
Yeah. The what's the famous one? The eagle, the
Maltese Falcon.
Maltese Falcon. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and then Repo Man. Remember there was the car with aliens in the back seat or something, or Pulp Fiction. There was that box with something that glowed in it. I mean, these are all MacGuffins. They just drive. We don't know what they are, and in fact, you don't really want to know what they are because it'll ruin the story. So some of the themes in Indiana Jones, kind of like George Lucas's influence, I think, is just this very simple good versus evil. Yes. Very Joseph Campbell. There's a lot of Joseph Campbell Jungian archetype stuff going on there that he loved. Yeah. And you have like in Star Wars, the dark side, the light or whatever. I mean, it's very cut and dry. There's no gray in there. You know what I mean? And so in Indiana Jones, we've kind of talked about, you have the good archaeologist who's like basically looting these things for museums. And then the bad archaeologist who's out there trying to loot these things for private collectors or something. Right. And then now in hindsight, we'd probably, like we've already discussed, say, hey, those are both looting, Right. And in 1990, they passed the Native American Graves Protection Act, NAGPRA, which was like when we started to take all of these remains, all of these museums in the eastern United States and across the country had all of these Indian remains or American Indian remains. And so it was like, we're trying to repatriate these remains back to where they belong, and also repatriate these artifacts, because it's like, what do you need? I mean, I would feel bad as well. Like if somebody came in and like dug up my mom's body and then took it to a museum somewhere and just held on to it forever. You know what I mean?
I agree. I was just in Austria, and I explored the I went on a tour of the catacombs.
Oh, did you?
Underneath a cathedral built in 1100.
Wow.
And it was just thousands and thousands of bones. And at first you're like, wow, this is so amazing. And then you start to realize, wait a minute. These are just human beings here that we're all just looking at. It's so crass. There was something so, I don't know. It wasn't a great feeling.
Did you come out of that with a sense of your own mortality or something, or was it?
Yeah, and also you just the sheer volume of people who've died, and that's just one little. You just think about the number of bones, human bones, that have been on the planet. My God,
that's what they talk about. I've read places, or in certain places, where there were so many mummies in Egypt. I mean, we're talking thousands of years of people dying and being mummified, that they would use them to like, for fires, for example. They would just burn mummies to stay warm, for example. Wow. I mean, it's just whole different context of like, it's just a mummy, another mummy.
Well, they ran out of room underneath the cathedral, so they started stacking the bones and making walls out of the bones, and then making like little rooms out of the bones, and then filling the rooms with bones, and then mixing everybody's bones together. But you would put the heart or some of the organs in special vessels for people who were super fancy, just because they ran out of room. They just didn't have anywhere else to put them.
Did they let you take photos down there, or was that
no? Thank God. One guy did, and they caught him, which was just so like, dude, just
make it delete it. Were they like, you gotta delete that?
I hope so. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm afraid of authority, so I just walked away. Especially in Austria,
Yeah.
Come here.
I'm So another theme, of course, is we've talked about the American international hero. Again, he's supposed to be our James Bond. So somehow Indiana Jones is out there saving the world for America, I guess, even though I don't know what that little golden amulet or golden shrine would have done for American democracy, but okay.
In the wrong hands. In the wrong hands, it could be used as a weapon.
And the Ark and the I don't know, the Grail too would have made everything.
You can't
different.
have Hitler. Hitler can't have anything. You got to keep it out of Hitler's hands.
Listen, I'm going to tell you, you would not have an oil shortage in the 70s if Indy had brought that Grail home.
No shit. Got that right.
Solved everything for us. And then they talk about, well, you have and this is typical of a lot of movies, of like the American archaeologist is all fists. He's out there solving problems with his fists and his whip. And whereas the English archaeologists are always, they're kind of solving problems with their brain, kind of more, I guess the implication, I guess, is being more feet, I guess is.
Well, after being American in Europe, that's true. We're
you think
idiots. So? I think Europeans are smarter. To us overall, they've got a more they're just more flexible in their thinking.
Did you was there anything? Well, we'll have to do a show just about culture shock. And talk about your experiences.
Okay, absolutely. That sounds great.
And then finally, we have and again, I think this is both for Spielberg and Lucas. This idea of redemption of the world through a return to a more nostalgic, childlike
state.
Yes. And And again, there's less ambiguity. There's less sexual ambiguity. There's less ambiguity when it comes to good and evil.
Which is exactly what was happening during the time, during Reagan's 80s. I mean, that was it. Let's no bones about it. This is the Cold War is such and such, and this is the way things are. You're with me or against me. Well, that was later, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I think it was, because it was like the Soviets were evil, America's good, or the West is good. Mm-hmm. And you just kind of break it down. And what came out of that time period is like, I mean, Star Wars was a little bit earlier than that, but definitely Indiana Jones is a product of the 80s. Mm-hmm. And it's just very simple, you know, like you don't worry about it. This is very clear that like there's good people, archaeologists, and there's bad people, archaeologists, you know? So kind of moving on, the movies we've kind of discussed already, the movies, how do you feel about them now? Like, you just watched them with your son. Do you still like them, or do you?
I mean, I, you know what? I'm so easy. Like I always say, like, look, you could turn a lightsaber, you could film a lightsaber being turned on and set on a table for 2 hours, and I'd pay $14 to go see it. You know what I mean? And so I know that the that 7 of those movies are not good at all, or have issues. Jar Jar Binksian. Yeah, let's put it that way. But God, it's it brings up, it's like a smell. It brings up so many other memories and so many other things that it's very, very difficult for me to separate it out and to look at it truly.
Yeah.
But, you know, I do think structurally that first movie, pretty darn good, you know. It was set up. It was just a little engine that worked. Pop movie, you know, typical Spielberg pop sensation. It's like sort of appreciating Michael Jackson. Well, until we learned more about him, but you know, appreciating that, you know, it's like, wow. Or the Beatles, you know, Jesus, they could make pop songs that were solid. And I know Beatle fans now are going to hit us. Oh, they were much more than that, but you know, so that's how I feel about it. I do enjoy it. But I think I'm thinking about seeing it with my brother, like what you said, you know, going, that memory of going to, what was that theater? Glenwood, where we grew up. And I remember going to Star Wars, and the line was wrapped around the block. You had to stand in line to get your ticket.
Did I ever tell you, when 1977, my mom would go to work really early. And so a friend of mine and I wanted to go see Star Wars. So we had my mom drop us off first thing in the morning. Like, the first movie wasn't until like 2:30. We had her drop us off at like 6 in the morning. And we sat outside Glenwood for like 8 hours till about 2.
And then I bet you weren't the first people either. Were there other people when you showed up?
We were the first.
You were the first.
But I was like, I got to go to the bathroom. And it was at the gas station across the street. I was like, we got to run over there. So we both ran over to use the bathroom after sitting out there for 8.5 hours. We came back. There was a line around the building.
No! Why didn't one of you stay? What the fuck? You should have called me. God damn it.
We both had to go.
Why? One of you has to stay. God damn.
8 hours. First in line. We were like, this is it. And I just remember that. You know, it taught me a lesson. It's just like,
you're fucked.
Don't get out of line. Yeah.
Just do what everybody else does and take the seat they give you.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm kind of the same way. I love the movies, but looking back on them now, there's things that really bother me about them, about the character. I also find, you know, it's like, okay, so the character, just from a character standpoint, and maybe I'm being too critical of it, but it's like, okay, he's found the Ark, he's found the Holy Grail, and yet he's still the same guy. You know, you go back to the little college, there's still all a bunch of white people and one black guy in the back, And nothing's changed. Like, he hasn't learned. He hasn't, like, you know what? Why don't we all love each other or something? You know what I mean? It's still, he's still kind of the same guy. And then the second one, which was supposed to be the most James Bond type one, which starts with him in a tuxedo in, you know, Shanghai or something back in 1935 or something. And where suddenly now he can speak Mandarin and Sanskrit and everything else. And then there's like this big fight where he punches like the cigarette girl. It's supposed to be like camp or something, but it's like, Jesus Christ, he just really punched the cigarette girl. That's probably like a traumatic brain injury and caved in her face or something, you know? And it's like all with like a dance tune or something.
Yeah, and it's all choreographed. Like there's music is still playing through all of that.
Yeah. And it's just kind of like, wow. And then I don't know. That second one is just weird, man. That Temple of Doom to me is
all the kid stuff. It is bizarro. That's bizarro. But you also, that's when Spielberg is starting to figure out the whole theme park aspect of it, or the video game aspect, because you'll see the scene where you're like, oh, this is going to be in the video game, right?
When they're in the mining cars or whatever. He's kind of, I hate to say, he's kind of an asshole in that one, I thought. Yeah. You know what I mean? If that was supposed to be Spielberg's take on James Bond. It's like, I don't know, man.
I don't know. And then he married his own Bond girl that he cast in it, which makes it even weirder. I mean, we're not shrinks, but let's dig in here.
And then, did you see the last one that with the skulls that came out in like 2008 or something?
Yes, of course. I saw it all. Everything. Seen it all. And now we got another one, and he's going to be 80. Oh, what the hell's going to happen in this one?
Oh, no. Really?
Yeah. They're making a new one. They're making another one.
It was. I felt it was stretching believability in the one in 2008 where Indy's like running around up on top of boxes and jumping around. It's like, this is like a 7-year-old man. I'm like, but who was it? Was it John Hurt in it? That like John Hurt plays a guy who's lost his mind and has no lines. Remember?
Yes. John Hurt. You know, you see, that's what's so great when you see these, like Molina. You see these amazing actors.
Yeah.
It's basically just a machine.
Yeah, of like he probably was like, okay, if you're not gonna give me any line, give me one line or don't give me any lines. You know what I mean? He's just like
he probably just played video games in his trailer. I mean,
doesn't have to learn anything.
Yeah, didn't have to learn anything.
There's a couple things that bother me about that one. There's like a line where Indy's being chased on a motorcycle or something. They go through the library. And some guy says, Dr. Jones, I'm asking about the test or something. And Indy says to the kid, like, oh, don't worry about that. Worry about diffusionism or something. Study diffusionism. And it kind of bothered me in a sense because diffusionism is this idea of like through cultural change, like cultural change only happens when like a more advanced in parentheses or quotation marks advanced culture interacts with a less advanced culture. That's what diffusionism said. So diffusionism was I get it that they were trying to say it for the movie because ultimately spoiler alert that this whole idea was that these aliens had come down and given some culture or something to people. But the thing is diffusionism was used to justify colonialism. Like going in and exploiting what Western Europeans consider to be less advanced or primitive cultures. So I'm like, that's kind of, it's a throwaway line. I see where it's a scene, but that's kind of,
it's pretty harsh.
Yeah, like couldn't you have picked out another one? Just to make the movie work. Yeah, I get it, but and then the other thing that kind of bothered me was that. Marion Ravenwood is still pining away for Indy after everything.
I know, and he's been banging women all the way across the
Oh yeah,
the globe. He's like yeah. No,
there's a line in there where he's like, "There was a lot of women, but none of them were you, honey," or something like that. You know?
Jesus.
And I'm, to me, the most, having been raised by a single mom, I'm like, the most impressive thing is that Marion Ravenwood was able to raise a son on her own back in the 50s. You know what I mean?
Yeah, which ain't easy. My mom was married and she raised 2 sons on her own.
So I guess let's just talk about, we'll sum up with some of the other representations of archaeologists, and I'll just throw some out to you. Okay. Lara Croft.
Oh, fantastic video game. Frustrating as hell. Yeah, really? That video, but the water, when she would jump into the water, I'd never seen water like that in a video game. I mean, that is an over-sexualized, crazy-ville porn, essentially. That's what that is. It's porn mixed with a Rubik's Cube. That's what those video games are.
How do you feel about, like, as a man playing that when you're playing Lara Croft, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was a adolescent boy when I was playing Lara Croft. And so, Laura could look all around and there was a way to look up right at her boobs. So I'm playing Laura, looking at my own boobs, getting turned on. Explain that one.
How did you find, did you succeed finding anything in the tomb, or was it?
Absolutely. And now look at me. Look, obviously I turned out great. So it didn't affect me negatively in any way. Yeah. I guess that was a bizarre.
Did you see the movie? Did you see the movie with Angelina Jolie?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Apparently they're getting ready to do another one with Phoebe Waller-Bridge or whatever is going to write new Lara. I think she did Fleabag.
Oh, really?
Right?
She's going to write it?
They're doing a new Lara Croft.
Okay. So, that could be, all right. I'm interested in that.
Another one that kind of leads us to, like, another representation of female archaeologists in the movies is it's a subcategory of the sexy librarian where it's like, she's like with the glasses on, like looking at the microscope, or like, looking at the pottery sherds, and then, the spirit takes over, and of course she takes the glasses off and the hair comes down.
My God, you're beautiful, Mrs. Jenkins, or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen the movie Pimpernel Smith?
No.
Pimpernel Smith came out. Yeah. Came out in 1941. It was by Leslie Howard, who had played, who was it?
Naked Gun.
No, not Leslie Howard. He who was that? Leslie Nielsen or something, right?
Oh, right. Damn it.
He played Wilkes, the guy in Gone with the Wind.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He was an English actor.
Handsome.
Yeah. And it came out in 1941 during the war, but it was kind of like a twist on the Scarlet Pimpernel, where he played an archaeologist that would go to Europe before the war and help smuggle people out away from the Nazis.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Schindler's List before Schindler's List.
Right. Or even, I guess you could say, like Indiana Jones fighting Nazis before
Indiana found.
Yeah.
I like that. What's it called again?
Pimpernel Smith. It's a slow one.
Really? Yeah. Well, we'll put the link in at the bottom in our comments.
Yeah, it's on the YouTubes. You can watch it for free. But and then sadly, I mean, this was during the war, so he's making a movie about the war.
Wow,
during the war.
Mm-hmm.
And then Leslie Howard was shot down by the Nazis, like in 1943 or something. He was
a pilot.
No, he was on a plane. Not to laugh about it. He was on a plane flying from like Portugal to England, and he was outside the war zone or something. I guess they had agreed upon some area that, okay, if we're outside here, that's just a passenger flight. But the Nazis went ahead and shot it down.
Shot it down. Wow.
So, yeah. So, but it's kind of interesting. He plays the Pimpernel Smith, Scarlet Pimpernel, is kind of plays this absent-minded guy. That's his disguise.
Right.
And so Pimpernel Smith is kind of the same way. Everybody's, that old archaeologist can't remember anything, and really he's smuggling people out.
That's like me. I play dumb, but I'm really, you have no idea what's going on.
You're playing chess. The rest of us are just playing checkers.
That's
what I mean?
Right. That's
right. Speaking of you, I'll put up the other one. I have another one on the list. John Henry Hoyle.
Oh my God.
Who was an intellectual action hero as well. And I'd like to know how you balance that.
Well, I thought it was, we were just juxtaposing things because that's funny when you do that.
Yeah.
So an idiot who's a genius, book smart and street dumb. That's what he was at his core. He was a Harvard graduate who had very poor social sense and was a braggart like all Harvard grads are. Would let people know he went to Harvard, without them even asking, which is what most Harvard grads, do, as we all know. And, that was fun. That was a really great role. Really.
Did you do your own stunts through it as well? Was it?
I did a few, but no. There was, as we got more money and the stunts got more advanced, suddenly a stunt guy would show up who looked like me, but 5 times more handsome. And he would just be smoking a cigarette, just talking to somebody, and you ready? Put the cigarette out, and he would do the stunt the first time every time.
Really?
Yes, because apparently they only get paid once, whether it takes 5 times or 1 time.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So he just would do it. I remember he had to jump through a window, smash through a window, do a shoulder roll, and then step up and fire a gun. And then after that, they were like, cut. All right, everybody freeze. And then they walked a goofball actor in there. It's like, there you go.
Wow. I thought you did your own stunts on that.
I did a few. I did quite a few because we didn't have the money. But the big ones I didn't do. I was on top of a stagecoach that was moving, and I was being throttled by a bad guy. That was pretty good.
Yeah,
and I had to ride a horse and shoot a gun, which is not easy at all. That is not easy. I mean, we grew up in Kansas.
A pistol or
it was a 45 Colt, the big long ones, the 7-inch barrel. It was like a big piece of metal, and then you have to gallop loping on this horse, trying to look like you knew what you were doing. That was some acting.
Yeah. Did you ever? Are you the type of when you develop the character where you thought about like what was John Henry Hoyle like when we first? Did you go back?
You mean, did I have an animal and did I?
Did you like imagine what would John Henry Hoyle be like if he was like his first day of class? Just to kind of help fill out your character.
No, I don't do a lot of research, backstory research.
I just had to ask.
What's his favorite color? What's John? I don't know.
All right. This has been fantastic. I could go on forever. I'm going to cut it short. I had some other stuff to talk about, but we'll save it for another time because I start talking to you, John.
Oh, a goddamn pleasure, Mr. McCray. Goddamn pleasure, as always. I just hope our listeners are enjoying it 1/10 as much as I am.
I was thinking, I've known you for over 40 years, and I still enjoy talking to you.
I know. Isn't that weird?
That is weird.
It's very strange, because I don't have that relationship with, anyone.
Yeah.
That I can think of.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, we've only had one fight in our life, and it was when we were broke, hungry in France, as I recall.
Yeah.
Remember
that we had to stay alive. It was staying alive.
I stole some croissants and we went to the Louvre. Do you remember?
It was like Jean Valjean. We could have ended up Les Miserables, 1986 or something. It
was the best of times. It was the worst of times, my friend.
So, closing arguments about, or closing thoughts about Indiana Jones.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest takeaway is let's all ease up. I mean, we can cut down these movies very easily, and they're just pop. But let's ease up on they were a moment in time, a blip in time, and
right.
They served a purpose for a bunch of teenagers who didn't have anything else to do.
Yeah, I agree. It's the entertainment business. They're just meant to be there to entertain people. Mm-hmm. And it's a product of its time, like you said, meaning the 1980s, not the 1930s.
Yeah.
No,
the 80s. Yeah, just the pop of it all, the popcorn butter of it all is. They don't make I guess the Marvel things are like that now, but not really.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the same vibe at all.
Yeah,
the Marvel things feel more like amusement park rides. This felt more like fancy B movies. Fancy. Yeah, they were like. Yeah, it was cool. It was interesting, but boy, did they! Yeah, it's hard to watch. You got to grit your teeth to watch them now from today's point of view.
I think one of the points we made in one of our shows, not this show, but a show we did years ago, was like, nobody's curing cancer in Hollywood. This stuff is just like, it's just for fun. It's entertainment. And so
God, as I said to an actor who we were doing a commercial, and he was pitching the director new ideas after we'd been on set for 12 hours, and I said, hey, come here. And he comes over. I go, stop pitching new shit for us to be doing, okay? We're selling shampoo, all right? Let's sell our shampoo and go home. Don't be going for an Oscar here. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just entertainment business. I mean, that's what it is. And I remember back in when I lived in Chicago, I was doing research on the film industry in Chicago back in the early days, meaning like from 1915 to 1920, before they went out to LA. Mm-hmm. And I read an interview in the 50s by Bronco Billy Anderson, who I'm going to get off track here, but Bronco Billy Anderson was the A and S&A Studios back in Chicago back in the early days. And they had asked him at that time, are there any stories that you wish you could have told? And he said back, and this is 1950, Bronco Billy Anderson said, there's only about 10 stories you can tell. And I've told all of them many times.
Man versus man versus nature, man versus machine. Yeah.
So people are just, whether it be Indiana Jones or whether it be like the new Ghostbusters, all-female Ghostbusters, it's just like, just cut it a break, man. It's just like, it's just for fun. You know what I mean? It's And
that scene in Bridesmaids, god damn, that sequence is funny as hell.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure, my friend.
You too. Thank you for everything. I've learned a lot about you this time.
Really?
Really? Yeah. Well. Yeah. I mean, your method. I like to see your method that you use when you develop a character. I like to
do a lot of background.
Do you go I'm gonna go out and live like John Henry Hoyle out in the?
Oh yeah.
All right, John. Well, thank you everyone for joining us.
Yeah, this is human number 2.
And this is human number 1. And thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Bye.